And she told me she should have said, "Don't be strong." And that was probably the best advice she could have given me. What's up, everybody? Thank you for tapping into another episode of This Saint Pretty. I'm your host, Alasia J, and this episode is one that is very difficult for me. We're going to be talking about sleeping with a broken heart, aka losing the one you love, aka grief. This topic is one that has, plagued my life, if you will, for many years. I lost my younger sister, Giovani, 7, almost 8 years ago. And it is something that has been one of the wildest rides in my life, right? It's really difficult. And so if y'all see me getting choked up, if I have a moment, bear with me because I don't want to make this about her, but it is a major part of, what I've been through. And many people go through grief. We lose, grandparents, parents, spouses, children, whatever it is. It's not an easy thing to go through. It's very confusing. It's very hard. And it doesn't make any sense. And I had, after I lost my sister, one of the best things that somebody said to me, my aunt said to me, she was like, "Lage, don't be strong." And I didn't know what she meant initially because, usually when somebody passes or dies, they're like, "Be strong. You can get through this one day at a time." And she told me she should have said, "Don't be strong." And that was probably the best advice she could have given me, because what is strength when you lose somebody you love? What is strength when a piece of you is gone forever? What does that even mean? What does strength look like? Outside of just going day by day, like that's really all you can do. So let me slow down. Okay, my sister was killed in a car accident on her way to a job interview that I called her to go to, and I had given her the keys to my car, and probably no more than 20, 25 minutes later, she was gone, right? And so one thing that I really dealt with was survivor's remorse. I dealt with the guilt of feeling like it was my fault. And I feel like a lot of people experience that. Like, for me, it was, what if I wouldn't have answered the call for the interview? What if I would have taken her to the interview instead of giving her the keys? What if? It's a million times what if. And there's other people, your person may have been in the hospital, or it might have been a heart attack, or even if it was like somebody like drinking and driving or something, your thing is, what if I would have driven, or what if I wouldn't have driven? What if I would have called the ambulance? What if I would have went to the hospital that day? It's really difficult to, your brain is always playing tricks on you about how you could change the situation. But we don't hold life in our hands, unfortunately or fortunately. We don't have that power to control life, and we don't have the say so in when a person goes. Only God determines that. And that was another really difficult thing for me as well. It's like, well, God, why would you take that person away from me? Why would you take my baby? Why would you take my best friend, or whoever the person may be? And you watch all these different things and read these different articles about the stages of grief and how you're supposed to do it properly and the best way to do it. There's no right way. There's no clear and cut way of grieving. There's no proper way to get through it. I would say there's definitely some unhealthy ways, which many of us go to. I went to drinking. I wasn't drinking no hard stuff for real, but I did what I knew to do. Drinking my little wine coolers. And we just deal different ways, hiding away from family, removing myself from friendships, and kind of withdrawing, not wanting to deal with people, whether it be my own children, my nieces, which were my sister's children, it was just hard, man, and I didn't know how to process it. And a lot of people go through that. You don't know what to do. You don't know what your next step is. And it's just literally is one moment at a time. Because you can be okay 1 minute and completely distraught the next. You can be just fine and then you can hear a song or smell a scent or hear a voice or see somebody in the distance that looks like them, and your brain is telling you that's them, but then you have to come to the realization that it's not. And one of the most difficult things, like, I mean, I've lost my grandmother, I lost my grandfather, I've lost other relatives and stuff like that. Like, other people in my life have died. That she wasn't the first death that I experienced, but she was the closest. And the hard thing about that was, when somebody is really close to you, you don't realize how permanent death is until it's somebody that you're used to being there all the time.
Can I jump in right quick?
Yeah, what's up?
Um, so can you go back a little bit and explain like the many deaths that you experience in a short amount of time? Because it comes as it comes. You see what I'm saying? Could you
Yeah.
explain that a little bit?
Oh yeah. So, um, I mentioned the one, which is my sister, but there were several back to back. We probably lost. I would go to upwards of almost 10 family members in a matter of about 3 years, no more than about 6 months apart. I lost two of my uncles, which were my mom's brothers. My great aunt, my grandmother's last living sister, a neighbor that we were really close to. He was like a older gentleman that was really close to me. A man that I called my grandfather, Papa T. Who else? One of my cousins, Florida. He was one of my cousins that I didn't see often, but when I saw him, it was like a good time. Always look forward to seeing him for every family reunion and gathering at my uncle's house, who had also passed. So that was my great uncle. So that was my grandmother's last living sibling. So how many people was that? I don't know, about 8 or 9. And then some people who weren't blood relatives also that were still close, that were like family. So yeah, that is what we call compound grief, which is a real thing when you have multiple deaths back to back and multiple griefs back to back to back. And that was really difficult. And I was also trying, when my sister died, I was trying to I was in the midst of getting a divorce. So that was also something. And having both of us had our girls are 2 months, our baby girls are 2 months apart. And they were only two when she died. So my daughter turned 5 days after. So we missed her birthday for 2 years because the death of my sister always overshadowed it. And so when we finally had a birthday party for her, we had a party. So yeah. Whew. So grief is hard as heck. The whole anger, denial, acceptance, what's one of the other steps? I can't even think of all of them at the moment because I'm in my feelings right now. This is probably gonna be a very sporadic pie because that's what grief is. Last year was the 7th year, and I probably cried harder last year on the anniversary of her death than I did outside of the first year that she died or the second year. So that's how crazy it is. And I think it's because I came to a realization that I was avoiding a lot of the things that I loved because I didn't feel like I deserved to do them anymore because she wasn't there. Were you about to say something?
Do you ever get over? Does grief ever go away?
Nope. It's always there.
Now, is that your opinion, or is that something that's like, is that like a actual fact?
I would say it's an actual fact. Now, I would say I've taken grief classes. Like I said it before, I'm a marriage and family therapist student. So being in school, we take classes on grief, and it never said there's a time that grief stops. I mean, it becomes easier at times, but it still hits you because At what point do you stop missing somebody? At what point of your life do you say, hey, this person is no longer supposed to be here? I don't think you ever get to that point
Does
where
it help if, for the believers in Christ, right? Does it help if you know that they're in a better place, they're in heaven, they're actually in a good place? Does that, I mean, I know you miss them, like I get that, but knowing that they are like no longer suffering, does that help at all?
I guess it depends on what the process was for him. So, because if it's somebody that's sick, if somebody is dying slowly, yeah, like if that person's in pain, I don't want you to be suffering. So, I'd rather you be gone and pain free than here and in pain. For the grief that I experienced, at least with my, well, most of them were like really, really quick deaths. Like none of them were we expecting. I think only one of my uncles was in the hospital when he passed away. But other than that, most of them were like maybe we were expecting them to come home from the hospital if they were in the hospital or they were just gone. Like my neighbor, he drowned. So that was unexpected. And this he was somebody that we had gotten really close to. He's the person that got me on Barry White. So I never listened to Barry White, and he let me drive his truck when my car had broke down. And so I would drive his truck every day, and it was an old pickup. And he had a CD player, and who had CDs in the 2000s? So I didn't have any CDs. And Practice What You Preach by Barry White was on there, and I fell in love with that song. Still love it. It's still a bop. So shout out Champ. That was my guy. Where were we going? I know you asked me a question. I don't
We're
even
talking about,
remember.
like, when someone, if you're a believer in Christ and the life they live, they're a repentant person and they went to heaven and
Yeah.
all that. Does that help? Now, what I mean
Excuse
by
me.
suffering, I'm not talking about even just like, suffering because of health. It can be suffering because of finances, suffering because of a lifestyle,
No, I
or,
mean,
any kind of suffering.
nah. Literally, the only thing that makes you feel a little bit better is if it's through sickness. I mean, for me, I don't know what other people feel. Some people can lose a person and really move on really fast, and they're okay. Like they don't think about it much. I'm not that person. I value relationships and closeness, and my sister was like my ace. Like she was my everything, and we were tight like that. So it wasn't an easy thing to deal with. And I don't think there's any point in time where I don't think about her. Like when, as I see her children growing up, I'm like, she should be here to see that. As my children are growing up, like she should be here to see that. Even her knowing my husband, like I want her to know him. I'm like, y'all would be tight. Like it would be so funny just to watch y'all. And that's not going to happen. I think about my cousins who I would see sporadically through the years. It's like you'll never get to meet your little cousins, the little me. Like we can't sit around and talk about the stories that we have together. And so those are the things that are really difficult. And you're like, well, if you were here, this would be this way, or if you were here, we could do this. There's always those moments where it's like you put that person in the now, in the situation that you're in, and it can get really, really hard, but it's one day at a time, because there'll be times just like you may go through, like especially after a recent death, you'll go through a time period where it's just like, okay, you're going, and then there's a moment where life kind of slows down and you're like, you've missed all these things, and we have all these memories that we failed to make. And social media wasn't as popular 7 years ago. Everything wasn't a selfie. Like you took some and you had them, but everything wasn't. And so it's like, dang, I should have kept those pictures. The last pictures me and my sister took, and I'm gonna drop them in the video, were terrible. It was like 4 in the morning, and the girls woke up, and her hair sticking up on top of her head, and we're just like, okay, we taking pictures. Like, why is everybody up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 in the morning making jokes and laughing? But all of us were up. And I feel like that was God's way of just, giving us a little bit of something, because he knew what was about to happen. I just didn't know. And
But then you have that one experience where you kind of knew, but I mean, you didn't know, but you saw.
yeah, So what that was is she was laying on the couch one day. She had fallen asleep and she was laying on her back. And in reality, I don't know if her hands were actually on her chest or not, but that's how I saw it. I saw her laying there with her hands on her chest, and I looked at her and I was like, she's gone. Like, I looked at her and it was like, she's dead. Obviously, she wasn't. She was asleep on the couch, but even in that, like when you see those things, and if if you're a believer and you see that, automatically you just start praying. So I just started praying against it. I was like, that can't happen. And there was nothing that ever made me feel like she wouldn't be there. Me and this girl planned our lives. Like, we planned on being like 90 in our 90s arguing about stuff. We planned on living next door to each other and just getting on each other's nerves. Like, that's how we talked about our lives. Like, we looked forward to getting on our kids' nerves together when we were old and making them go do stuff. Like, that's how we talked. And we would sit around and listen to This Woman's Work by Maxwell and just cry. And we would cry about my grandma, but sometimes it wouldn't be about my grandma. We just cried. We listened to certain songs and just cry because that's just what we did. And I avoided those songs for years. The movies that we would watch, we had the same sense of humor, goofy as all get out. I avoided the movies that we watched for years. We finally watched, one of our favorite movies was Johnson Family Vacation. Like, we used to always crack up on that movie. Like, I don't care how many times we watched it. And I finally watched that movie again after 7 years. Like, I did not watch it. I would avoid the things that we enjoyed. The Grinch, like all these things you try to avoid. And so I guess some people would avoid the memory. They'll avoid thinking about them. They'll avoid the things that are going to trigger that memory. Other people hold on to it like a clutch. Like, they can mean, I cannot let it go for nothing. Like, I don't care if it's a scarf, a hat, a photo. You hold on to it for dear life, because if you let it go, it's like letting them go. And for me, it was avoiding her for someone else, is never letting them go. And either way, it's not a healthy thing, because because in reality, they're gone. And the best thing to do, and one thing that made me really angry, because my husband and I met about a year, a little less than a year before she passed away. I mean, after she died. And he told me, he was like, yeah, you got to let her go. And I was pissed. Who got to let who? Are you crazy? You let her go. I'm not letting nothing go. But in reality, that was a healthy thing for me to hear, because over time I was like, okay, you have to let her go. Letting her go in the sense of, she's not on this earth anymore. I mean, she's always in my heart. When I see my nieces, I see her. When I see certain movies, I see her. When I hear her certain jokes, she's there. I think about other people in our family we've lost, and the jokes that we all made together, and she's there. But letting them go is giving yourself peace. It's like, if you were to hold the butterfly, you squeeze that butterfly, it's going to die. Holding on to it doesn't bring it back to life. Holding on to it doesn't make it any better. Holding on to it doesn't make it any easier. But when you just let it go, you free yourself to move on and to gain more and to live more.
So, question. And I'm asking this because I've never lost anybody like that close to me at a older age. When I lost somebody who was close to me, I was in probably like the 6th grade, and it was the only man I ever knew as my grandfather. He wasn't my biological, but he was my grandmother's brother. So I remember that, and that was pretty deep. But I have never experienced what you have experienced, especially with all the multiple deaths, especially like a sibling. So what I'm trying to get to is, like, how do you find the balance between, like, letting go? Is okay, but I think my question is letting go and avoiding feelings. Is there a thin line between that?
For
Because
sure.
you know what I'm saying. It's like, okay, letting go could be also mean like I'm just gonna avoid those feelings. I'm gonna avoid those movies. I'm gonna avoid those memories. I'm gonna
Yeah.
avoid all that stuff.
Yeah.
How do you let go, but those things are still there?
Feel it. And what I mean by feel it is, So when I finally, like, say, I watched Johnson Family Vacation, there were moments of true sadness. Like, I really was sad, but I still enjoyed the movie. Like, I was like, yeah, it's different not having the person to say all the lines, and I'm getting a little emotional. Not have to say the lines with and stuff like that, but I can create these memories with my children. I can create these memories with my husband now. It's a like it's figuring it out. Go to therapy. Unfortunately, therapy wasn't as popular when when I was going through all these losses and didn't really understand the importance of it, or see the significance in it. But getting help having someone to help walk you through that is, that's disconnected, because they can help you process what you're unable to process. And it's a healthy thing to do, because at some point in our lives we'll probably lose somebody close that we love. Now, it'd be wonderful if, listen, if you live your entire life, if you live to 80, 90, 100 years old, and everybody goes with you, listen, I'm blessings to you. You're one of God's favorites, and I mean it. However, if you are not so blessed to live your entire life without losing anybody, then if you find yourself unable to cope, if you find yourself doing harmful things such as drinking, using drugs, thinking about death, then go to someone and get the help that you need. If you feel like you can't talk to, a loved one or somebody that's close to you, somebody that you care about, go to someone that'll be a little more that's a little more distant, that could be more objective. Because one thing that I was fearful of and I couldn't do was I couldn't talk to my mom because she was grieving her daughter. And it was like, how selfish of me to go to her about my sister when she's lost her daughter. I didn't know how to balance that, because I'm watching you hurt. I can't take the hurt away from you. I'm hurting. She's not here to make us laugh about it. It's a lot to process. And so there's many people, like, you'll go through that. You have the people that were closest to you, your clique or your group with that person, and none of you can't communicate with each other because you have that missing part. Like, there's certain people you can lose in your life. It feels like losing a limb. And you can look it up. There's a thing called phantom limb. So if a person loses their arm, they can feel like their arm is there, or their arm is itching, but there's not an arm there. And that's what losing a loved one can be like sometimes. That's what losing my sister felt like. I was like, I have lost a limb. I have lost a part of myself. I didn't feel like I should laugh. I couldn't be funny no more. I wasn't silly anymore. My husband, when he found that I was silly, this was years into our relationship. And it was like, when he would see me, one of my best friends at the time, she would come around and we just see cackling. Or my aunt used to always say, y'all cackling like hens. We be cackling like hens. And then when she's gone, we didn't have that anymore. And he was like, how you act like that with her? It was just a familiar place, and we could talk about her and she understood. I didn't have to explain everything because she was there. And so you lose a piece of yourself. And for me in my life, it was a lot of new things, because I had just, like I said, gotten out of I was getting a divorce. I had moved to a new city and a new place. So I'm losing friends. I'm losing relationships. One of my really close friends ended up getting locked up, and I didn't even know until months later. So when I was calling this person, they weren't even there to answer the phone. So there were so many things happening at one time, and it always feels like when you lose somebody really close to you, most people feel like there's a lot of other things going on in their life, so you can't process. But you have to slow down and really feel those feelings. Like, you have to slow down and say, it's okay for me to hurt. It's okay for me to cry. It's okay for me to miss this person. It's okay for me to feel frustrated and angry. Like, all of those feelings are okay. Do the best you can not to hurt yourself in the process, but feel what you have to feel and express what you have to express. That's what I'm saying. If you don't have a person, if you don't have somebody you can go to, go talk to a therapist. Go talk, sit on the couch, let them take their notes, but get through it. Because I could have, I thank God for my children, because if it wasn't for them, I probably would have done something really bad to myself. Like if it wasn't for those kids keeping me mentally grounded on earth, I probably would have tried to leave this earth because I didn't see, and I didn't see the purpose of me being here because I felt like she was everybody's favorite anyway. Like everybody liked her more anyway. She was the funny one. Everybody liked GiGi. Everybody cool with Vonnie. I was the one that talked too much. People didn't like me too tough. So I was like, it should have been me. And so not having the person, we were yin, was it yin and yang? Yin and yang, whatever. She was the time to my Jerry, the all the stuff. Anyways, I don't have all the analogies right now.
How was your relationship with God during those
I
tough?
dumped him.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about it.
I
Or
dumped him
tell us about it.
because it was so. I felt everything was so unfair, and I didn't know how to process what I was feeling. I didn't. The church I was going to at the time, like I was active in it, but oh, and I mean she was going there too, so everything reminded me of her, and I wasn't getting what I needed because nobody was talking to me about how to go to God when you're angry with God. How do you talk to God when you feel like he's the one to blame? How do you go to God when you feel like it's his fault? And so I walked away. I was like, I'm done. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about me. I'm over it. Because I was broken. And I was like, God, if you would do this to me, and it's like, and not just do it to me, but you would do this to my mom and just leave us out here stranded and do this to my nieces, then I won't want nothing to do with you. And then, like I said, and then it was so many more deaths after that. It wasn't like my sister and we had years to heal. No, it was 6 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later, 4 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later, 8 months later. And it was like, bruh, give me a break. Like, literally, give me a break. Give me a moment, okay? And it was just too much. And so I was like, I'm done with God. I'm over you. You're not fair. You're not this sovereign God that they be talking about. You're not so great. I was like, you're actually really mean and you're unfair, and I don't like you anymore. So since you did this, I'm good on you. Literally, my words were, I'm good on you. But he's so gracious and merciful that he wasn't done with me. Thank you, Lord. So I came back to Christ just 2 years ago, and that's that'll be another episode we talk about my walk back to the Lord, because that's a good one. But yeah, grief caused me to walk away from God,
Did
and
grief cause you to go into a different direction spiritually? Were you still like hanging on to like the concept of Christianity, or did you start to just like say, okay, forget God and Christianity? Did you veer off? Like, what was that like? You don't have to go into the whole like going back to Christ, but I just
now, yeah, now I veered a little bit because I felt like there's other things that can give you more peace, spirituality. I charge my crystals in the full moon, or whatever. And if you get the song, you get the song. So yeah, I started trying other things and dibbling and dabbling. Thank God I didn't get too far out into it. And like I said, I'll also share that on another pod about my spiritual journey and how I got back to having a real relationship with Christ. But I'm grateful that He's so merciful that despite all the pain that I was going through at that time, I didn't get too far gone. Because I did start drinking, and I wanted to use drugs, but I was too scared. So I'm thank God for a little bit of fear because I was too scared to go out there. But in all seriousness, this episode is to let you know that grief is hard and it's crazy, and there's no right way to do it. Just go through it. Do your best not to hurt yourself. Trust in God through the process, despite how it feels, because it's crazy. And there will be a lot of tears if you're a crier, or a lot of anger if you're an angry person. Or I'm not gonna say if you're an angry person, but just whatever it is, you have to go through it all. Feel everything that you need to feel, and be honest with yourself about what you're feeling. And don't be strong. Just feel it, because being strong is weird when you lose somebody. Like I don't understand that concept. And when somebody asks how you doing, you just are. And there's not even a right answer when it comes to that, because people will say, well, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years, it's been 50 years. I don't give a darn. If I'm here to see 82 years old, I'll still miss my sister, because I'm gonna look over one day at my husband and be like, boy, G was in. I like rocking chairs or swings or whatever, and if that's what we sitting in or recline or whatever we sitting in at the time, and I look at him and I be like, man, if G was here, da 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 da, we be making jokes about whatever. I wonder if she'd have any teeth.
Are you grieving now?
Yeah, whenever I want to be transparent about what I've been through, and not just surface, it brings up a lot of feelings, because I think about the years that I ignored my feelings and the years that I tried to even push her out of my mind sometimes. And as this episode was coming up, my dad sent me a picture of her yesterday, of me and her and the girls. And earlier, my husband was watching a video that was about walking in the cold, and it played the song "Missing You" by Brandy, Shaka Khan, and whoever else is on that song. I think Whitney Houston, maybe. I don't think it's Whitney, but yeah, "Missing You" by them. And so yeah, it's been a lot of feelings leading up to this, and I wondered how I was going to handle it. And for me, this is probably going to be a terrible episode, because I'm so jumbled and scrambled and nervous, because it's sensitive and I don't talk about it often. And usually when I talk about it, I try to have a very therapeutic mind, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, this is how you heal, and this is how you feel, and you go through the stages, and how do you feel about that? Um, Instead of just being like, yo, I lost my best friend that I planned my whole life with. I lost uncles who I was supposed to see again and never did. My auntie was supposed to come home and she never did. My cousin was supposed to come up for the film reunion and he's not. So it was like all those different things, my cousin was supposed to teach me how to cook something, or I had one of my cousins who died, and I was like, she was gonna cook at my wedding. I ain't have my wedding yet, and she ain't here no more. So yeah, like I made plans with people, and
I got another question because I'm curious with the grieving stage. Those feelings that you're talking about, so I'm assuming that those feelings could be like nostalgia, sadness, and all those things. All the things that like you would call them heavy emotions, right? Do they ever have like a light version of those
of
things? Okay, and then
course,
sometimes are they heavy? Does it ever get lighter and it never gets heavy again, or does it just come and go as it comes?
it comes and goes as it comes. I mean, because you consider so. Excuse me. So I can sit around and if my brothers were here, we could sit around and talk about my sister for for hours and make jokes, and it'd be light and we'll laugh about it. Or certain things that my husband will do, I'll laugh at and be like, "Yo, G would think that is so funny." And it's very light, it's very bright. Different situations come up, and I'm just like, hey, this is the situation, and it's cool, and you're okay with it, and it's okay to be happy, and it's okay to feel joy, and it's okay to remember the things that made you smile. So I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's okay to remember the things that made you smile. It's okay to remember the things that made you happy and brought you joy and tickled your insides and made you warm and fuzzy. Like, you want to remember those things too. It can't be all heavy and darkness, because then you may need to forget that person. No, I'm just kidding. But you definitely you feel happiness and joy and excitement because this person was a part of your life that brought those things. And even if they weren't, you'll still miss that person. Like, we can lose a person that was no good for us and still grieve them, and then you're angry at yourself for grieving them. But the heart loves who it loves, and love is something that does not die. Like, the person dies, but the love does not. And I think that's the a hard thing with it as well, right? Because the love lives on and it continues, and the desire to give that love that you have for that person to them continues. They're just not there to receive it. And unplaced love goes where? Like unplaced love, like where does it go? And the thing about it is, like, if you were to shoot an arrow and just out into a dark space, you would wonder where it landed. And so I guess you can use, like, that could be an analogy for the love that you have for that person. It's like shooting an arrow into the dark. Like, maybe you're out there somewhere receiving it in the cosmos. As a believer, I don't believe that they feel our love, but I believe that God gives us peace, and gives us little nuggets here and there. Like, a red cardinal was my sister's favorite bird. And on her birthday one year, a red cardinal flew into our house. And I was like, okay, Lord. It's like, I don't feel like G's here because she's gone. But I just know, like, you're thinking about me on this day and you're remembering me on this day and how difficult it can be for me. And so little things like that'll happen. That'll just give you peace every once in a while. Like, like, listen, you're not in this alone. God loves you in the midst of it. God is concerned about your heart. One thing that I had to realize is God understands grief more than we know, because when He became man, and most of us know the story of Lazarus, and when Jesus got to Mary and he saw the sadness, Jesus wept, which is the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. And that just lets us know, like, listen, God understands what you're going through. God understands that pain, and He understands that sorrow. And it's a difficult concept to grasp, but even God understands why your heart is hurting. And you can find solace in that. At least I do sometimes. It's like when I finally realized that, I found some peace in that.
And I ain't trying to preach, but as Jesus being God, who's sovereign and all knowing, He knew from the very beginning that Lazarus was gonna die. But as Him becoming a man and experiencing humanity and being humble, that even though He knew it, He still felt he had compassion for the people, and He still felt the grief, and He still wept. Man, that just gives me chill bumps.
Yeah.
Just the revelation in that. It don't have to go any deeper than that. It's just the revelation.
No,
Knowing
for
that
sure.
He was all knowing. He knew everything that was happening, and there was still this softness in His heart, as far as being a human, that allowed Him to experience an emotion that everybody's gonna feel. Most people's gonna feel.
Yeah. And that's why, that's why I love Him, because he came to be flesh, 100% man and 100% God, to understand all of the experiences that we go through, and for Him to experience grief. And it doesn't say He wept for long. It don't say how long. It just say He did. It lets us know that we're validated in our feelings. And that was a revelation for me one year, when whatever time it was, where I was just going through it, and I was like, you know what? Even Jesus wept. So if Jesus can weep, so can I. Like, I can feel what I'm feeling, because this mess is difficult.
And you know why that verse was so short? Because when one of the disciples tried to, like, give him, like, a tissue, he was like, get off me, son. Bad
What?
joke.
Terrible. What?
It was different in my imagination. I just saw him being like, it was so short because he was trying to be hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, get off me, I'm good.
Yeah, no, that didn't go well.
All right, sorry, guys.
Well, on that note, thank you for tapping into This Ain't Pretty. I'm Malaysia J. Peace.